Okay, on the face of it, training for an Ironman is quite daunting. I mean, you're required to devote at least 15 hours to your training per week, and that, well, it quite simply puts most people off the whole idea altogether.
Yeah, but fear not, because even if you are juggling busy family, work, time pressures, commitments, you actually needn't be deterred from signing up for an Ironman. No, not at all, because what if we were to tell you that actually a great deal of the Ironman fitness required can be accomplished with a 10-hour training template per week?
Yeah, so actually by having a well-structured training plan across the 3 disciplines, you can stand on that start line of an Ironman with confidence. So today we're going to be running you through and exploring that 10-hour Ironman training plan. Well, first of all, there's no skirting around the fact that the swim takes up the least portion of any triathlon. And as we start to extend that out over an Ironman distance, that becomes as little as 10% of the entire time we're racing.
Yeah, it does, Mark. But we're not going to sit here and suggest that you actually start spending as little as an hour of your time in the water. Although granted, we do appreciate that an awful lot of you would quite like to be only swimming for an hour, which does kind of pain us to acknowledge because we really like swimming here at GTM.
Yeah, I mean, speak for yourself, Fraser, but nonetheless, less can actually be more with swimming, provided you have a good structure in place and you're turning up to each session with a real idea of what you're trying to achieve from that session, and that can actually make your swims really time efficient.
Yeah, so we're going to keep this really super simple here and have a max of an hour and a half swim time in the water per week, scheduled as 2 times 45-minute sessions. And firstly, you could do this as a strength and endurance type session to build your aerobic base, and that's a session that I always quite like to do first off in the week, say Monday mornings. Now, there are countless ways to achieve a strength and endurance type of outcome session, but here are 2 slightly differing session types for you to try. 45 minutes of almost continuous swimming with minimal rest between blocks. For example, 5 minutes of easy swimming leading into 4 times 8 minutes of swim with 2 minutes of recovery at the end of the pool, which itself can progress over time to 3 times 12 minutes of swimming with 1 minute of recovery, and then up to something like 2 times 18 minutes of swimming with 2 minutes of recovery. And this can be done over the course of 5 to 6 weeks. And of course, during a session like that, you can happily use pool buoys or even throw in some paddles too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, secondly, we're going to move on to later in the week, focusing on improving our speed. And this can be achieved through more of a threshold type session where we're working fairly hard, but with limited recovery. Now, this threshold workout not only helps us to improve our speed, but also to dial into a specific race pace too. So you want to start with a short warm-up of 400 meters as 75 swim, 25 drill, leading into blocks of 100s, starting with 12 to 15 reps with 15 seconds recovery between. This can progress to longer reps through the block of weeks, and a suggested trend would be moving up to 10 to 12 lots of 150 meters with 25 seconds rest, and then on to 8 to 10 lots of 200 meters with 35 seconds recovery. Now, those are 2 really good sessions that actually complement each other really well for your Ironman training. But if you're quite a keen swimmer, or perhaps you just happen to have a little bit of extra time in one of your weeks, then it is not out of the question to add in a 3rd technical swim to your week.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be long at all. It can just be a simple half-an-hour swim that can help with that all-important feel for the water, right? And I really would suggest keeping the reps really short, 25, 50 meters, concentrating on some drill work or some sculling. And equally, this type of session, well, it can double up as a recovery after your long ride or run at the weekend. all too easy to be intimidated by the volume of training that an Ironman can appear to require. Believe me, I felt this pressure of the presumed training load that was apparently needed. And there's no better example of this than trying to endlessly cram in bike mileage. Now, let's make no mistake, 112 miles is a long old way, and there's no escaping the fact that the training required is going to be demanding. But your readiness for an Ironman needn't be measured simply by how many hours you're logging whilst out on the bike. And believe me, it really isn't necessary to do bucket loads of 100+ mile bike rides simply to be capable of completing your Ironman event. Right then, what approach can we adopt for our bike sessions that means we are confident of still being able to achieve our target Ironman or race, but without devoting hours and hours of time to our bike training? Well, much like the swim template that we already discussed, we can focus on two key bike workouts that we can implement during our week. Now, the first of those could be indoor centered and focus largely on threshold type interval work. Or this could be swapped out for an outdoor session that would focus on hill reps, but still target a certain type of session. The second ride would be something that I would aim to do at the weekends and would be a longer effort, more time on the bike, but would allow us to put in more long race-specific reps and simulate what we're going to get come race day. Now, threshold training is something that many athletes are guilty of shying away from, and I'll not be the first to put my hand up and say I did that too. And the simple reason for this is, well, they hurt. They are tough sessions to do, but that's because they can dramatically increase our power and endurance, which is really useful for an Ironman event. And they really, if done well, can bring loads of bang for our buck to training. And that's something that we actually like to talk a lot about here on the channel. So always begin with a 15-minute gradual build warm-up that has 4 to 5 30-second pickups towards the end of this. And that'll lead into a main set that could look something like 6 times 5 minutes, zone 4 to 5 effort, with 2.5 minutes easy recovery in between. This itself can progress to 3 times 10 minutes, remaining at that zone 4 to 5 effort with, again, half of the recovery, which would be 5 minutes. Or we could swap these types of main sets out for something that's more hill reps orientated, and these types of sessions could be 4 to 5 times 2 minutes with a 2-minute recovery back down the hill, leading into something like 5 to 7 times 3 minutes with an equal recovery back down the hill of approximately 3 minutes. Now, the aim of these hill reps would be, just as if we were on the indoor trainer, to hit an effort level of about zones 4 to 5. And to be able to do this, we'd be looking to try and find a gradient of, say, 5 to 8%. That would be ideal. And then hopefully these sessions won't actually take us any longer than about an hour, but at the max, an hour 15 if we've got a good long warm down added on at the end. So this type of session allows for some race simulation. Now, ideally, you'll be able to choose a route that can mimic in some way the course profile of the race that you're targeting, but also what it's going to be able to do is allow you to start thinking about the nutrition strategy that you're hoping to employ come race day. Ideally done on the weekend, this long ride needn't be incredibly long. Now, let's not forget that the whole concept of this 10-hour training week is that we're not chasing an unsustainable volume of training. So bearing that in mind and aligned with the threshold and/or hill reps that I've already talked about, these long rides shouldn't be any more than 3.5 to 4 hours at the most. And sample sets to include would be 4 times 30 minutes at zone 3 with an easy 15 minutes recovery, building up to 4 times 45 minutes with a similar recovery period in between. Now, by adding a 30-minute steady run off the bike to that session is not only going to help by creeping our overall volume of the workout up, which is great for the endurance factor that we are needing for the Ironman we're training for, but it's also going to help with the race day simulation that I was just talking about, because let's not forget the jelly leg feeling that we get as we run at a T2 is definitely worth training for.
Well, now for the running, and by its very nature, this is actually the most impactful of the 3 disciplines, because you are now weight bearing. You are loading up through the joints on each and every foot strike. So it's really important that you're mindful of that and you're respectful of your body so that you don't arrive at that Ironman event you've been training so hard for injured and actually unable to complete the event. So to help you out, I've got 3 key workouts that you should try to fit into your weekly workout schedule. Now, the idea behind all of this is actually to give you consistency, because in triathlon training, consistency is key, particularly when we're training for an Ironman. So, first workout is actually an alternation of 3 different workouts. That is very confusing, I know, but the idea of this is that you do one of these workouts one week, the next week you do a different workout, and then the third week, another one again. So, we've got a threshold type workout, we've got a hill workout, and then we've got a fartlek tempo workout. Now, the idea of this is actually to give you that variety, keep the body guessing, and also make it fun. So a good example of a threshold interval session would be to start with an easy 15-minute warm-up with some 80-meter strides to finish, leading into 4 by 5 minutes at threshold, an RPE of 6 to 7 out of 10, with 2 to 3 minutes very easy jog recovery between. Then onto a hill session. Again, make sure that you have a good warm-up jog to the hill that you plan to use. That should not be too steep and not too shallow, somewhere nicely between the two, and aim for 12 to 15 lots of 45-second reps with an RPE of 7 to 8 out of 10, with your recovery simply being jogging back down to the bottom of the hill or to where your start point is. And as you get stronger, these can become 60-second intervals, but I don't believe they need to be any longer in duration than that, or we start to lose form and the benefits of the session. And then finally, a fartlek. And we're going to do a building pyramid of 30, 45, 60, and 90 seconds, and an RPE of 8 out of 10, with an equal 1-to-1 ratio of recovery before coming back down the pyramid in the same fashion. And this can actually be repeated 1.5 or even twice through too. Well, now for that second weekly workout, and this is the long run. This is all about time on the feet, which is particularly important when you're trying to complete a marathon at the end of an Ironman. So with this, be really mindful of where you're starting off at. Don't try to do too much too soon. And just increase by about 15 minutes per 4 to 5 weeks. So nice and gradually, and just increase it to a maximum of 2.5 hours. That's going to be enough to really improve that endurance that you're going to need for the event, but also it's going to hone in that mental toughness you'll need for race day. And finally, if time allows, a brick workout or a run off the bike. Now this is particularly useful for a triathlon and an Ironman triathlon. Now this needn't be any longer than 30 minutes. In fact, it can be as short as 20 minutes and provide a very good and adequate stimulus for a triathlon. Now, you can add this in after that shorter midweek ride, or if you like, you can add it in after that longer ride that you do on the weekend that we've already discussed.
Okay then, let us wrap this up and recap the training that we've been discussing so far. So we've got 2 swim workouts that gives us an 1.5 hours of time each week in the water. We've got 2 bike rides, both indoors and outdoors, that at a peak will give us 5 hours of riding. And 2, but if time allows, 3 key runs in the week that gives us 3.5 hours on our feet.
Yeah, which means we can confidently say that on no more than 10 hours of your time, you can put together a really solid Ironman training program a number of weeks out from your planned event. But it is worth us pointing out that this does require some prior fitness and training behind you. So we'd suggest that you can competently swim up to or in excess of 2,000 meters before taking on this plan. You've ridden 2 or 3 times in excess of 3.5 hours on the bike, and you've done up to and in excess of 90 minutes for your run a couple of times. And this just ensures that you have that base and endurance behind you to be able to feasibly take on a 10-hour training plan and do it successfully.
Good luck with that, and do let us know how it goes in the comments section below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, so hit that thumb up like button if that's the case. Not forgetting to click on the globe to subscribe. And if you want to see a video about how to train for an Ironman on minimalist training, you can get that here.
And if you'd like to see our how to train when you're limited for time video, just click down here.